In an article published by the New Arab last week, today's guest, Ahmed Alnaouq, writes the following words. It was exactly this time last year that I sent my usual message to my family on our WhatsApp group, asking if they were all okay. I had no idea this would be my last message to them. Until today, no one has responded. It has been a year since Israel dropped a bomb on my family home, murdering 21 of my closest relatives. They were Ahmed's father, Nasri Alnaouq, who was 75, his sister Wala and her children Raghd, aged 13, Islam, 12, Sarah, aged 9, and Abdullah, who was 6. Ahmed's brother Muhammad, with his children Bakr, aged 11, Basima, aged 9, his sister Ala and her children Islam, aged 13, Dima, who was 12, Tala, who was 8, 4-year-old Noor, and Nesma, the youngest, who was just 2. His sister Aya and her children, Malak, 12, Muhammad, 9, and Tamim, 6. The Israeli attack also killed Ahmed's brother Mahmoud Alnaouq, who was 25, and his cousin Ali, who was 35. Ahmed's article is titled, Israel thought they could bury my family, but they didn't realize they were seeds. He says that while writing this article, for the first time I've dared to look back at our conversations in the weeks before the unthinkable happened, scrolling through the WhatsApp chats with my siblings, listening to the voice notes, reading the text messages, even casting my eyes over the photos we once shared with each other. Ahmed Alnaouq is co-founder and director of We Are Not Numbers. He hosts a podcast with Palestine Deep Dive. He is advocacy officer for Euromed Human Rights Monitor. He has a master's degree in international journalism from Leeds University, and his writings have been published by the Gulf News, the New Arab, and other publications. Ahmed appeared on the Electronic Intifada livestream exactly a year ago, and that was just days after Israel's massacre of his family. We're very pleased to welcome you back today, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you, Noura.
Hi, Ahmed. Good to see
Thank
you
you.
again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed. Ahmed, your article is so beautifully written, and it's painful and heartbreaking just to read it. It must have been extremely difficult for you to write and to relive the agony of your family's loss. Did you find comfort in telling some of the stories of happier days with your family? And are there any of those memories that you would like to share with us now?
If I have to be honest with you, Ali, I never struggled to write a story more than I did with writing this story. And the New Arab approached me maybe 2 months ago asking me to write a story on the anniversary of the 7th of October. And then I promised them yes, and then I couldn't actually write a story. And then I promised again that I would write a story for the anniversary of my family. And I was supposed to submit the story like 1 week or 2 weeks before the anniversary of my family, and I kept procrastinating and procrastinating because it was very, very difficult on me to start the process of writing for the first time in my life. I wrote many features before. I wrote many stories before, but this was the first time I struggled really to start writing about my family. Well, 10 years ago, as I said in the story, Israel killed my brother, my older brother, and that was the first time I lose a family member. But writing a story about my brother back then, 10 years ago, it was much easier than writing a story about my family. And I think it's because when you lose only one brother, when you only lose one family member, you know that your sadness, your agony, your pain is focused, is concentrated. You know what you are lamenting for, you know what you are crying for, you know what is very deeply painful to you. It is a brother. 10 years ago when Israel killed my brother, I couldn't forget about my brother. Immediately after I lost my brother, I remembered all the stories that we had together, the memories, the pictures. And for me, that was a relief because I knew who I am sad for. But when you lose a 21 members of your family, it is very difficult, but at the same time, you could not know who you cry for. You could not know who you weep for. I didn't know to think about my father or my brother or my other brother or my sisters or my nieces and nephews, the 14 kids who I raised, some of them. I was very distracted for the past year. And because I was very distracted, I couldn't think of one specific person of them. I couldn't dare to think of one of them for the past year. I would always avoid talking about them. I would avoid going to WhatsApp messages that I shared with one of them. So it was very difficult, and I purposefully try to avoid like remembering them, because if I remember them, all of them, I will be 100 times more depressed than I am. But because I promised the new Arab that I will write a story about them, I forced myself only like on the 21st of October, which is like the anniversary of my family, to write something. And then I sat on my laptop and I said, okay, I want to write. What should I write about? And I had no idea what should I write about. Like there are literally hundreds of memories, hundreds of stories, thousands of memories I could write about. So you would feel very, very distracted. You don't know what to write or what should you write. It's like 21 members of your family. And those family, I lost them only on the 22nd of October. But after that, I lost many other family members. So I was very distracted. Then I found myself like going to our chat, a group on WhatsApp, and then going to each one of my family members' WhatsApp and reading the messages for the first time. And I have to say, for the past year, I wasn't very emotional. You know, okay, I have to say that for a distraction. My wife lost a family member, her brother, on the 7th of October last year. And you know, when you hear that he was killed on the 7th of October, you would think that he was one of Hamas fighters who entered Israel. No, he was sleeping in his home when Israel dropped a bomb on his family, on his home, and he was killed. And then on the 7th of October, the other year, my wife was with me and she was crying because she saw the memories of that year, of that incident. And I told her, why are you crying for? You only lost one family member. So for me, like losing one family member feel like naive, silly. Like you shouldn't cry for your brother. You shouldn't weep for your brother. It's only one brother. And then, yes, a year after that, when I wanted to write a story, I couldn't write about one person. So I started reading all the WhatsApp groups and messages, and then for the first time, I feel that I am very emotional. Because as I said, I was not emotional for the past year because I lost so many, so I stopped being emotional. Then suddenly, when I started reading these messages and listened to the voice notes from my family member, I started crying. Because why I'm saying that? It's because the last messages I shared with my family members were actually some good memories. It was finally, my family members had some comfort in their life. I have to be honest with you. I wasn't raised in a very rich family. My father was a very, very hardworking a man, and we struggled all of our life financially, and so many problems. But finally, a few months before the war, finally our status got better. Finally, my brothers and sisters had some positive uh, stuff that happened to their life. For example, my brother Muhammad used to live in, a house, a flat, asbestos flat. So it was leaking water in him all the time for many, many years. It was leaking water in him. His bathroom was very destroyed, that it was leaking water from underground. And finally, my brother asked me to borrow him some money so can he fix his house. And the last message I had with my brother, he was sending me messages of his flat. That's finally he's renovating his house. Finally, the water would stop leaking on his house. Finally, he was very, very happy. My other sister, she just moved to another house. She used to live in a very, very small flat for her and her four children. And finally, she moved to a house that she and her husband used to build, was saving money for 10 years to build. It was a very nice house, very beautiful. My other sister, they were highly in debt for 30 years, for 13 years. And only 2 months before the war, they paid off all of their debt, and they were finally doing well. My brother Mahmoud, he finally got the scholarship that he wanted for so long to study international relations in Australia, and he was very happy. So all of my family members during the past like 2 months before the war, they were very happy, and I was engaged at that time, and my family were very happy for me because I got engaged finally after many years. They've been waiting for this moment. So all of the messages that I saw on the WhatsApp group and the WhatsApp chats with me and my siblings were happy memories. And suddenly I look in my phone, and everything is gone. My brother and his children and his home that he was still renovating is gone. My father, I remember the last conversation I had with my father, and it was during the war, and he told me he's very resilient. He doesn't fear Israel, and he is going to stand fast in his home forever, and nothing could break him. He is gone. My brother and his scholarship is gone. My sisters and all of their children is gone. All their dreams, all their aspiration, everything that they have worked for is gone. All my memories in my home that I was raised up in is gone. So it was very difficult to write that. It was one of the most stories that I struggled with.
Hmm.
And I don't think that I will ever write something that I will struggle as much as I did with this story.
Hmm. Ahmed, I just want to say you did such a beautiful job paying tribute to your family, and it's just unfathomable what you've gone through, and to think that there are, every single loss is a whole universe destroyed, and yet there are so many people who, like you, have lost dozens of family members and who are going through the same thing, and it's just
Yeah.
unbearable.
And especially, I mean, you left Gaza, years ago, and like Ali said, for many Palestinians around the world who have family in Gaza, it just, I mean, it's unspeakable. Um, the constant fear, the survivor's guilt, and the trauma, and this like just the overwhelm. I mean, what you were saying about losing one family member versus nearly 2 dozen. How do you even start to process all of the weight of that grief? um you talked about your father and the last phone call that you had with your father Nasri. You write in your piece, "My father was my weak spot. Even before the war, it always brought a tear to my eye when I thought about him and realized how far away I was. The prospect of losing him while I was away had haunted me for years. I had already lost my mother after I left for the UK, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing my father the same way." Um, can you talk a little bit about that constant fear as someone not in Palestine who are watching, watching what's happening now for 13 months? They're, tell us a bit maybe about your father and how he continues to inspire you, and what thoughts can you share with other Palestinians from Gaza who are far away from their families and from their homes in Gaza?
Yes, of course. So my father was my weakest spot because no matter how much I try to praise my father, I will never give him his right. For me, he was the definition of perfection. He was the definition of passion, of love, of sympathy. He was the most compassionate person I've ever met and I will ever meet in my life. And he was a very hard worker. My father was the most intelligent person I met. He has a photographic memory. He spoke English and Hebrew fluently without going to college or school. He was very smart, very distinguished, but unfortunately, he didn't go to college because he had to support his family when he was very young, when my grandfather died. So, and my father, like, I don't know. Okay, let's stop talking about what he was. My father was born in 1948, a few months after the Nakba.
Mm.
And I said this story many times, and I will keep saying it every time. I will never get enough of telling stories about my family. On the same day that my grandmother was giving birth to my father, on the same while she was giving birth to my father, in Deir al-Balah in Gaza in 1948, her father and her uncle went to the market in Deir al-Balah market, And while they were there shopping or fetching a doctor to see my father, I don't know what the consequences were, but they were in the market, and Israel dropped a bomb on the market in Deir al-Balah on the day that my father came to life, and both of them were killed. So my father was born during the Nakba, and he was killed during the second Nakba. He was killed at the age 75. And as you can see, he was a very, very simple person. He wasn't sophisticated. He wasn't arrogant. He was very simple, very kind. He used to be a laborer, hard worker. He used to go every day from 2 a.m. in the morning to go to Israel in the 70s and 80s and 90s to work as laborer and get back home every day at 6, 7 or 8 p.m. He used to work very, very hard just to support us. He had 90 children. Do you imagine one person with a laborer and he had 90 children? He had to raise them, educate them, spend some money on them. But his life was very difficult. But having a very difficult life did not crush his soul. He was always very compassionate. I'm going to tell you two stories to explain to you how passionate and how merciful he was. You know, my mother died during when I was in the UK in 2020. And losing my mother crushed me because I was away from her. I couldn't see her. I couldn't kiss her goodbye. And it crushed me. But I always said, okay, the moment I return to Gaza, I will go and just have some memories, have something like to remind me of my mother. And I always thought, okay, my mother had some jewelry that she inherited from her grandmother. And that was very special to my mother because she inherited this jewelry from her mother. So I said, when I go back to Gaza, I will have part of these jewelry and I will save them because they will remind me of my mother. But then a few months before the war, some thieves jumped into our home and they stole the jewelry of my mother. And that I was very angry and very sad, not because of the value of the jewelry, it's not very expensive, but because it meant a lot to us, to me and to my brothers and to my father. But then out of by coincidence, by chance, the police knew about it and they put the man who stole the jewelry in prison. And then when they questioned him, he said he sold the jewelry so that he can buy drugs because he was like a drug addict. And then after a month or less, his family came to my father and they told him, please forgive us and let the man get out of prison. And my father, just like that, he said, I forgive you. So he did not care about life. Only a few days before the war started, and I saw the pictures on my chat with my brother. My brother and my father were going out to buy something for my brother's flat, to fix the flat. And then while they were in the car, a truck came and they hit the car of my father. And he almost, fortunately, the truck hit the car from the back, so it didn't hurt my father. But it was only like 30 or 40 centimeters before my father get injured or something, and he crushed the car, that truck. So I called my father and I was very angry and I was very sad. How did this happen? What did you do to this man? And he said, I just forgave him. I told him why. He said, he just said sorry and I just forgave him. So my father forgave the man who almost killed him because of his recklessness. So that was my father, a very passionate man, a very cool man. And I never saw my father angry or sad. Nothing in the world could make him angry. Nothing in the world could make him sad. Nothing in the world would make him feel like hateful or have a grudge in his heart. He always forgives people no matter what they do to him. No matter what you do to my father, he would always forgive you. He never shouted at anyone. He never cursed anyone. He never made any one of us sad, even our children. He was he was 75 years old, but he had a open heart surgery and he was sick. And he would never ask me or my brothers to grab him a cup of water, for example. He would do it himself. So my father, for me and my siblings, he was our weakest spot. And after my mom died, because Israel did not allow her to receive treatment in 2020, and while I was in the UK, I would every day before I go to sleep, I would remember my father, and I would say, if my father passes away when I am outside, I will never forgive myself forever. I want to be with him. If anything happens to my father, I will never forgive myself. And even before the war, when I have this thought that something might happen to my father, I would immediately find tears in my eyes, because he was very special to me. He was very kind. I loved him more than anyone in the world. And suddenly he's gone. But not only him and his children and his grandchildren. And my father was a very simple man, but he was very political, and he was very, very well read. Every day he would spend hours and hours reading all the newspapers that he could find. And he was very hopeful. He never lost hope that Palestine will be free. He always told us that no matter what happens, this is an occupation, and occupation will go. But he was not a political. He never joined any political movement. He was a very simple man, but he had an insight, a very wise political insight. And I think it is because of him I am who I am, and I will always be grateful to him.
Allah yarhamu, Allah yarhamhum jami'an. There are really no words to express the depth of your loss and the loss of so many people this past year, that I think we can see, Ahmed, that it's going to take a very long time to even start to come to terms with the scale of this genocide. And we're so grateful to you for sharing what you have shared about your family, so we keep them alive, and we try to keep everyone alive through our memories and our stories. And amid the extraordinary loss, and this struck me so much about your writing, Ahmed, you somehow find strength in what you've gone through during the last year. You write, I know this trauma is everlasting, that it may well be passed on to my children, but this pain is also a force that will empower me for the rest of my life. We're going to ask you a bit later to talk more about We Are Not Numbers, but tell us now about some of the other work you've been doing over the last year to advocate for Palestinians. What has been keeping you busy and going?
Well, unfortunately, I'm someone who can't say no to anything. And when I lost my family, I decided that I will never stay silent, and I started immediately posting and writing about my family. And because of the gravity of what happened to me and to my family, so many people started like asking me to speak at events, to speak to the media, and I never said no. And I believe that I was privileged in a way, because I lost 21 members of my family. The suffering is huge, but I am not the only Palestinian who lost family members. There are thousands and thousands of Palestinians in Gaza who lost multiple family members, who are going through 100 times worse than what I'm going through. And I said, okay, I lost a lot of people. I need the time to stay at home, just to cry, just to weep, to remember to grieve for my family. But at the same time, I am privileged in a way that I have internet connection, I have electricity and power, and I am in a free country where I can, I think, a free country where I can speak up, speak loud without having to be bombed for my work. So I said, I will just dedicate my life to talk about my family, to talk about my people, and talk about Palestine and Gaza. Because if I don't do that, then I am complicit. Because God gave me like at least the language to speak, the electricity. For people in Gaza, like for the past year, they don't have electricity. They can't just charge their phone and then speak to the media and speak at events. So I have been attend every day. I go to an event here or there, not only in the UK but all around the world. I have traveled the world during the past few months, speaking at every conference I can find, speaking at every, speaking to any media I am invited to. That's why I agreed to speak to all of the mainstream media. I never said no, because I believe that I have a responsibility, and this responsibility, I must fulfill it. I must shoulder it, because if I don't, then I will be complicit. But also at the same time, I'm losing my family and what's happening in Gaza. It gave me a purpose for my life. And we all, as a human, as people, we always think that life can be meaningful if you are fighting for a noble cause, if you are doing something very noble. And nothing is more noble than fighting for the Palestinians in Gaza who are under besiegement, who are under bombardment, who are under genocide. So that what happened to me and what happened to my family gave my life a purpose. And I have always fought for Palestinians. I have always spoke for the Palestinians, but it now this purpose is very, very, very clear. It's very determined. I will not do anything in my life except for talking for the Palestinians and speaking about my family. I will keep speaking about my father, my brothers, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews, my people, my hometown, Gaza and Deir al-Balah. And this is what I will be living for, no matter what the consequences are, no matter what the blackmail and the threats are. This is what I'm going to do, and nothing will stop me. But this is not because I'm strong. I'm not strong. Do you know who are the strong people? The strong people who are in Gaza, who are reporting the truth to power under the drones, under the bombardment, who know that they will be eventually killed for their reporting, for their stories, for their voice, and they're still speaking. Like Anas al-Sharif and the journalists of Al Jazeera, who Israel identified like militants. And they know that this is a message that Israel is going after them, but they still continue to report and tell the truth. These are the powerful people. The powerful and the strong people are the children in Gaza who are still surviving the bombardment and who are still hopeful that one day Palestine will be free and still doing what they can in order to survive and support their family. We are not strong. We are privileged, Ali. No matter what we do from this safe country, this privileged country, with a freedom of movement and speaking, not very much freedom of speech, but we are privileged here. And no matter what we do, that doesn't say that we are strong. But if we are silent, then we are cowards. And I don't want to be a coward person. This is the last thing I want, is to give Israel the pleasure to kill us and we are silent. I will never be silent, because if I am silent, then I am complicit, then I have betrayed my family.
Talk about you do a podcast with Palestine Deep Dive. Tell us briefly about that. What do you tell us? What is Palestine Deep Dive for those who don't know, and talk about the work you're doing with them.
Yeah, of course. I'm very proud to work for Palestine Deep Dive. It's a very small media organization that started a few years ago, but then after the genocide, we tried to change what we are doing. So basically, Palestine Deep Dive is a space or a media organization that gives the Palestinians in the UK the platform, the space to come and speak their mind out and clear without any censorship. So what we do a podcast. Like I'm sitting in our office space here, and we do a podcast. We host Palestinians, or if I don't, I host Palestinians, and I ask them to tell their stories to the world in English, in a language that the world understands, in a language that they can say. But if I'm not interviewing Palestinians, then I am a Palestinian. I get to invite people to come to our studio and ask them questions about Palestine. So it is, we consider it is a space, safe place for the Palestinians in the UK to come and speak up and tell their stories to the world in a language that the world understands. And I am very, very proud of that. I joined Palestine Deep Dive in February this year, and ever since I have been doing some podcasts and some videos, and these videos and these podcasts got millions of views, literally. And this tells you a lot, and this is what we do. We do stuff like you do, Electronic Intifada. We complete each other. There is a lot of thirst for Palestinian voices here in the UK and in the West. The media, the mainstream media, have long oppress the Palestinian voices, dehumanize the Palestinian voices, demonize the Palestinian people. We were never given a space, safe environment in the media, in the mainstream media, so that we can speak and tell our stories and talk about what happens to our lives. So what we do now is that we're trying to create a platform, an alternative platform, so that the Palestinians can feel safe when they speak to the media, exactly like what you are doing in the Electronic Intifada, which is really, really powerful. So we don't do written content. Mainly we do podcasts, YouTube shows, and we have been helping Palestinians speak up for the first time. I'm very proud of some of the work that we have done. I'm very proud of a podcast that I recorded with Hala Abu Libda, a Palestinian from Gaza, who called me a few months ago, and she asked me how I'm doing, and I asked her why, and she said she had the same story like my story. She lost all of her family members in Gaza, and she did not know what to do. So I encouraged her to come and to tell her stories, to tell her story and what happened to her family. I'm very, very proud that we help Palestinians come to this space and speak and tell their stories to the world. This podcast was watched by hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions. Like our clips got millions of views, and millions of people listened to her story. They watched her, they saw her speak from her heart, and nothing is more powerful than someone telling their story to the world.
You should be proud. It is fantastic and essential work that you're all doing at Palestine Deep Dive, and and as well, we are not numbers. This fantastic organization that was. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but that was co-founded by our good friend Rifat Al-Harir. Ahmed, for all of us, it's difficult to feel that the work we're doing is having an impact. When we see so much new horror every day, no end in sight. The one thing that people in Gaza and Lebanon need most, obviously, is an end to this genocide. But all of our protests still haven't achieved that. The governments in North America and Europe remain as firmly committed to their unconditional support and abetting to Israel as ever. But and many Arab regimes sadly act the same way. Obviously, we're not going to give up. But what are some of the positive signs you've seen over the last year that keep you motivated to keep doing this work?
Nora, we don't have an option.
Hmm.
We don't have a choice
Yeah.
but to keep going. And I know that the moment that we despair, the moment we say, okay, we failed. And sometimes I have these moments. I'm a human after all. I'm not always very strong, very powerful. Sometimes I have these moments of despair. But I always remember and remind myself, and I'm very lucky to have people around me who keep reminding me that it's not over yet. And sometimes it feels that the situation is very bleak, very dark. Yes, it is very bleak. It's very dark. What is worse than a genocide? And genocide has been inflicted on the people in Palestine. And we have lost so many people, and we are still losing so many people. And no matter how much we protest here in the UK or in the US, nothing changes. Sometimes we feel that we're screaming into the void, that no one hears us, that no one cares about us. And sometimes it's the truth. Unfortunately, we, the Palestinians, we're looked down at. Like our lives don't matter to some people, especially to the people in power. Our life don't matter to them. And no matter how Israel kills. And sometimes I wonder what else should Israel do so that the West changes their policy about Palestine. A genocide, they have committed a genocide. Using starvation as a weapon of war, they have done that. Banning UNRWA, for God's sake, banning UNRWA, they have done that. They have killed journalists, more journalists than the entire 20 years. They have done every atrocity you could think of, killing children, beheading children. They did. And the UK and the US and their intelligence and all of these people, they know exactly what Israel is doing. It's not a secret. It's not like a matter of lack of information. They know what's happening. They know that the weapons that they send to Israel are going to be used to decapitate babies, to destroy families, like my family. They know all of that. But they know that but now we know that they are part of the problem. The UK and the US, they were never neutral to Israel and Palestine. They are part of the problem. And now we know more than ever that Israel is, yes, it is the colonial project of the West. But at the same time, we know that it's very dark, very bleak, very difficult. The situation is very difficult. Sometimes it feels like there's no hope in the horizon. But I know that we can't stop. Because the moment we stop, the moment we despair, that moment Israel wins. As long as we are fighting, they will not win. And I have to say, we are doomed with Israel, and Israel is doomed with us. We will never leave Israel alone. Israel can kill, yes, they can kill all of the people in Gaza, they can kill all the people in Palestine, but we will always be there. We, the Palestinians who are outside, we will always be there. We will keep fighting Israel for the last breath. And we, the Palestinians who are outside, we're fighting Israel in our own way. We're fighting Israel in words, and words are very powerful. And Israel will never get rid of us. Even if they kill the Palestinians in Gaza, the Palestinians outside Gaza will keep talking about Israel. If they come and kill me and kill you and kill Noura, then our friends and our supporters and the pro-Palestine activists will keep on, and they will talk and talk and talk. Israel will never get rid of us. They're doomed with us. And we will never die. We will never just evaporate. We will never go away. We will be there. And Israel knows that. And as long as I am alive, and as long as I am breathing, and as long as people like you are breathing and alive, we will never let Israel get away with it. We will never let Israel get away with genocide. No matter what they do, they can after me, they can come after you. But this is not going to work. Genocides have happened before, but the perpetrators never got away with it. They will never get away with it. They will never get away with killing children and women and men and young men. They will never get away with that. And the last thing I want from my life is for me as Ahmed to be complicit in that. I will never let Israel get away with the murder of my family. And so many Palestinians will have the same vision.
And we understand it may take time, but we will never give it up. I echo that sentiment completely. And Ahmed, you, through your own example and through the work you do, have really emphasized the importance of Palestinians telling their stories. And in the last few minutes we have with you, I want to talk about We Are Not Numbers. You're the director of this extraordinarily important initiative that you co-founded a decade ago to mentor young people in Gaza to write their stories and share them with the world. And of course, as Nora mentioned, another co-founder was our dear friend, Dr. Rifat Al-Ar'ir, who, of course, was himself murdered by Israel last December 6th. We Are Not Numbers has mentored hundreds of young writers, and many of them write for the Electronic Intifada, so we're deeply indebted to you. Please give us an update on the work We Are Not Numbers is doing right now, and what are some of the ways people can get involved and support the writers?
You know, Ali, it's really interesting that during the time of war, especially during times of war, the number of writers who join We Are Not Numbers has tripled and increased massively. The number of stories that we publish increased massively during the genocide. You know, we started We Are Not Numbers 10 years ago with the help of Rifat Al-Ar'ir and Pam Bailey and Dr. Rami Abdo and many others. So it wasn't only me, it was a group of people. And we started with the training 20 writers in 2015, 20 writers. And we said that's a good number. Now we have trained more than 500 writers, not only from Gaza, from the West Bank, from Lebanon, from the Palestinians all around the world. And now during this genocide, more and more writers come to us. And I have to say that we are not writers. Like the writers who join We Are Not Numbers are not really writers. They're not established authors. They're not as good writers as you, Ali, Abu Na'ma, and Noura. But they are Palestinians. They're young Palestinians. And what we do when We Are Not Numbers is that we train them how to write. We train them to be good writers. And we were surprised with We Are Not Numbers that these Palestinians, these young people are very talented. They just need their chance. They just need their opportunity, and they will do wonders. Some of the stories that they wrote for We Are Not Numbers are amazing. They're going to be a testimony. And I know now when we started We Are Not Numbers, for me personally, I said, okay, we want to write in English because we want to educate the world, because we want to stop the dehumanization of the Palestinians. But now after everything that's going through, that happened to Gaza, I feel that our strength in We Are Not Numbers is that we are recording history. We are recording history. And even if the world doesn't see or read our stories right now, and they do, by the way, we have a huge readership in We Are Not Numbers, but we are writing to history now. The stories that we are writing now, they will be read in 100 or 200 years from now. And the stories and the writing and the words of the young writers in Gaza who are 17 and 18 and 19 years old during a genocide, when they write their diaries, their thoughts, their ideas, what happens around them. This will be for history. This will be immortal forever, and this is what I am very, very proud of. Maybe I'm not writing for the people here and now to read. I'm writing for a better generation to come, because I'm telling you, we have been failed from these generations. But I have a huge hope that future generations, they will read our stories and they will understand what really happened during the genocide. Now, if you go to We Are Not Numbers website, we publish thousands of stories, not hundreds, over the past 10 years. Everything you need to know about Gaza, you will find a story written about it in We Are Not Numbers. You will find young men, young women. You will find poetry. You will find features. You will find opinion stories. You'll find all kind of what types of stories written about, written from young people in Gaza. And yes, we are Palestinians as well. We lost four of our writers. This latest story by Majd Salem. It was about one of our writers who was killed during the war. We lost four of our writers. We lost one of our mentors. But we never stopped, and we will never stop. And by the way, we will have a new design and new logo that was inspired by Rifat Al-Ararir's story, by Rifat Al-Ararir's poem, If I Must Die. So on the 1st of November, you will find a new design for our website and a new logo for We Are Not Numbers, because we want to immortalize the poem that was written by Rifat Al-Ararir, If I Must Die. And next year, we will have two books. We will release two books that are collections of stories from We Are Not Numbers. We have done documentaries, but most importantly, we have trained writers. And we think that writing a story is very therapeutic. And our writers are now writing because it is very therapeutic to them, and because it educates the world about what's happening in Gaza. And it will also be history. History will be written from these stories that we are writing. And recently, we were very, very lucky to have a few people who have now donated some money so that we can pay our writers. So for the first time in history, now we are paying these writers like a small amount of money so that they can survive in Gaza. We understand that the financial situation in Gaza is very, very difficult. So we have been lucky that some of our supporters are now donating little money so that we can support our writers. So this is something else. People who want to help We Are Not Numbers, they can share our stories, share our message, read our stories, and if they can donate to We Are Not Numbers so that we can pay our writers in Gaza, that will be great.
Ahmed, that's tremendously important. I can't emphasize enough the revolutionary work that We Are Not Numbers has been doing and is doing. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, I don't know the exact number, but probably most of our writers in Gaza have come to us through We Are Not Numbers, or after being mentored by We Are Not Numbers. And the only thing we feel embarrassed about is sometimes we have more stories than we are physically capable of editing and publishing. That's a real testament to how successful you've been. And we also believe that these stories are, yes, they play an important role now. We're always encouraging people, share the stories now so people know what's happening. But we believe that these stories together, that you are publishing at We Are Not Numbers and at other publications and at the Electronic Intifada, are part of history, that they are a unique archive of, sadly, that we have to make, because we cannot count on the mainstream media or whoever it is to write the history accurately. So it is of tremendous value what you're doing, and it's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that you are now able to pay some of the writers. This is very important. We also pay the writers in Gaza. It's a major part of what we do, because the just it's a lifeline for many people at this point. I mean, their work is work in any case, and it deserves to be supported. But particularly now, it's absolutely critical. So that's thank you for telling us that. And I know that there are people who will want to support what We Are Not Numbers is doing, and they'll be able to find out more ways to do that at the wearenotnumbers.org website. So it's really wonderful. Ahmed, I can't tell you how much it's meant to us for you to join us today, to speak about your family, to speak about telling their story and the importance of doing that. And as I said, it was difficult enough to read your story and to hear you speak about your family, much less to go through what you've gone through. So we just, on behalf of all of us and all who are watching, we just want to embrace you and embrace your family and tell you how much we love you and support you and appreciate what you're doing. And just to remind people, you are, of course, the director and co-founder of We Are Not Numbers. You also write for the New Arab. Perhaps you'll also share some stories with us at the Electronic Intifada. We would love that. And you write for other publications. And of course, you do a tremendously important work in terms of the podcast and the videos you publish with Palestine Deep Dive as well. Ahmed, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you'll come back again soon.
No, thank you very, very much for having me. I have always admired the work that you do for Electronic Intifada. So thank you for what you're doing for Palestine. It's very, very important, and you're making history. We're making history. So
well, and you're right. We have no choice. It's our honor. It's our responsibility. And it's our duty, but there's no conceivable alternative. We're never going to give up and just stop. And thank you for reinforcing that in us today, Ahmed. And we wish you all the best, and we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.